Shall we begin?
Let's begin.
Shall we sing the theme tune this time?
Let's do that.
Okay.
Do, 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 do. I don't know how it goes.
Wait a minute.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
Yeah. That's not our theme tune,
That wasn't
is it?
our theme tune.
No.
Oh, heavens. Oh, what about this one? Okay.
Hello, lovely listeners.
Well, with that auspicious beginning
Yes.
under our belts.
Yes. Just before we go any further, you are listening to Frithcast. It is Kate and Suzanne wrapped round the virtual campfire.
Indeed.
Pull up a log,
Indeed.
grab a cup of coffee, put a blanket over your knees, settle in, chill out.
And if you do find a muppet, just nudge them to one side.
Yeah.
They're accommodating people.
Well,
They'll be fine.
they stack, it's fine. You can just pile them up in the corner. So, before we go any further,
Hello. Yes, here we are.
hello!
Right.
Some introductions, I think.
Possibly so. Might
Yes.
help. In case we have anybody listening who
Who's-
hasn't joined us before,
Brand shiny new.
Brand
round
shiny new.
Round the virtual campfire.
fresh out the box,
Yay.
and joining us around the campfire for the first time,
Oh, that's
you are-
lovely.
you are very, very welcome.
That would be awesome.
I think.
If you are brand new, you are especially welcome. Welcome to Frithcast. You've probably gathered from our opening that, I'm not quite sure how we can adequately explain what we've
Why explain? Why
to.
explain?
No,
Why
just
explain?
leave it as a beautiful mystery beast.
Beautiful mystery bees.
Mystery beast.
Mystery bees. Well, I just wanted to make sure that nobody felt that we were welcoming them less than anyone else.
No, that's a good point. Yeah.
Where-
Be
but-
with all the welcomings.
Yeah, but of course everybody is especially welcome here around the campfire. What's in this coffee?
Well,
Yeah.
that's a good question.
Carry on.
Before we go any further, I think it's probably time we did some introductions.
Probably so.
I'm Suzanne Martin. I am one of the UK ambassadors for an organisation called TAC, which is the Asatru community.
I am Kate. I am your wife.
Hurrah!
You're Suzanne.
Mine.
Your wife.
Yes. Okay, that's good, because I needed that bit clearing up.
Yep. And I am not a Satru. I am sort of a sort of druid that Suzanne found lying about the place.
And decided to bring home.
I decided to do a podcast with. I'm not saying lying about. I was like, I was in the living room.
Okay, lying about in the living
Lying
room.
about in the living room,
Right.
probably watching Star Trek.
Oh, okay, that's a whole different spin on the... Yeah, that wasn't where my brain had gone with you lying about, but that's okay.
I know, but I can't account for your brain.
No, gods, thank God. No.
No, I love it dearly, but...
You mad fool.
So, yeah.
Welcome,
welcome.
lovely listeners.
Welcome.
Especially welcome
To those of you
all
who are especially welcome.
Yes, to all of you who are especially
Indeed.
welcome. To Frithcast, episode 32.
32!
Doesn't quite work the same.
13!
No, that was ages ago.
Well, I know.
Even 26 was ages ago.
But it's nice to... There where we went... 13! And
Yeah.
then I made it...
So that means in a few episodes' time we'll be doing it 3 times.
13.
13 times 3!
39.
39.
Yeah, you see, I get the...
Yeah,
I
we
do
get the maths.
I do the maths in the
The
end.
maths is there.
Yeah.
The maths is good.
What are we going to talk about today?
Well, today I thought we'd have a chat about ancestors.
Ancestors, okay.
Ancestors. Ancestors, when I do a ritual or a blot, they're generally a group of individuals that I will take note of in that ritual.
Mhm.
And I will generally welcome them in the opening and thank them in the closing.
I have heard you do this.
You have heard me do this. So
Seen you do this.
you have also seen me do this. So I will generally say hello to the land spirits and the gods
Yeah.
and the ancestors.
Okay.
Now, we've talked about land spirits before, and we've talked about the gods before, but we've never had an episode where we've looked at the ancestors.
Okay.
Now, ancestors, yeah, it's kind of complicated. Ancestors, to me, are the line of my family,
Mm-hmm.
in one respect, so
Yeah.
they are the people I am directly descended from.
Okay.
If you go back far enough, everybody kind of gets all muddled in together.
This is true.
You go back to sort of, what's his famous, Clovis.
Well, it's traditionally Charlemagne.
Charlemagne.
Charlemagne is the example that's usually used.
Yeah.
That
So-
we're all descended from him.
So in theory, if we
I
sort
should
of
say-
take that whole step a little bit slower,
I should say people of European descent are all
yes,
descended from Charlemagne.
which is another point I want to touch on later on.
Okay.
If you are from somewhere in Europe,
Mhm.
give or take, or your ancestors were from somewhere in Europe, you are probably, you go back far enough, you are probably related to every other person in Europe
Mm.
and wider afield, because people move.
Do we want to explain this mathematically?
You can explain this mathematically.
In
Lovely listeners, there is going to be a number warning because I don't do maths very well, so
I'm not
Kate's
gonna
going to
do it.
explain the maths part.
Actually, I'm going to do it without any maths at
Really?
all. I'm
Okay,
going to do it without
go.
any numbers at all. But
Go do the numbers thing.
the principle being that if each person has 2 parents,
Yes,
4 grandparents,
yes,
8 great grandparents,
yes,
and for every generation you go back, the number doubles.
yes.
So you end up with what computer people will recognise as a binary sequence: 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and so on, going
That's a lot of people.
back and back through the generations. The number actually expands very, very quickly. You don't need to be going back many generations to get, hundreds and hundreds of people who are all in the family tree of the person you've started with. Now, at the same time, back in the 11th, 12th century, round about the time of Charlemagne, you've got a certain number of people in Europe.
Yes.
And there are certain points in history where the number of people in that generation of your ancestors, so say your great 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 whatever grandparents, number equal or more than the number of people who were alive in Europe at the time. And as I say, I am focusing on Europe specifically, but if you go back even further still, you start to get into a situation where everybody who is alive, not only everybody who is of European descent, but everybody who is alive is descended from everybody who was alive at that time. So this is why they say Europeans are all descended from Charlemagne.
Yes.
Because Charlemagne had to be included in the number of people who were in our ancestral tree, if you like, at that far back.
Wow. That's a lot of people.
Which is kind of cool. And they say it's around about the 12th century for people in Europe, and the same would apply for different regions around the world. But the example, as I say, the common example is Charlemagne. So 12th century for people in Europe, and I think they said if you go back to about the 1st century or thereabouts, 1st, 2nd century, you find that basically everybody, and it is just purely because the number of people in one given generation alive at the time becomes greater than the number of people in that given area. So it's quite interesting. There's a name for it which I will find and put in the notes.
Really big.
It's somebody's principle, or I'll find the name of the study. It's quite thought provoking.
It is quite thought-provoking. Before we go any further, I feel it's probably important for me to say I am a universalist liberal heathen. This means that anybody is welcome around the virtual campfire. I do not understand that the faith of Asatru, the faith of being a heathen, is limited to people who are alive in Europe. I say that the gods call who they want, you know, and I have no right to say that they haven't been.
Who are we to argue otherwise?
You know, I have no authority to do that, and I wouldn't want it. You know, if somebody says, I've been nudged in this direction and I'd like to learn more, awesome. Come sit round the fire, let's have a chat. So where my principle of universalist liberal heathen differs from somebody who is folkish may understand that only people from European or Northern European descent can validly claim that faith. That is not my viewpoint.
No.
So when I'm talking about ancestors, it can be potentially a very emotive subject. It can be potentially one that divides modern heathens into groups because of the way that you view your faith.
Yeah.
So when I am talking about ancestors, I am not doing it in a way that excludes. Ever.
No.
That is not my thing, not my way.
I would have to say that I probably parallel this. If I mean, I have as you know, a long-standing affinity with the gods of Rome.
Yes.
As seen through the filter of a modern druid, which is, you know,
It's all good.
Go work that out if you like.
Go figure.
But at no point would I argue that, you know, these things are culturally specific. They are simply ways of looking at divinity.
Yeah.
You know, I was born and raised in Britain to British parents who were born to British parents and so on for quite a long way back as far as I know. Having said that, you know, that incorporates an awful lot of different strands over the centuries. So to me, it isn't something that, again, it isn't something that I can filter out certain groups of people and say, you know, you cannot look at this.
No.
It is.
And in the UK, we've been invaded and settled, and people have come for a holiday and stayed, and cultures have mixed and mingled, and ideas and people, and there is no one way of being British.
No.
But ancestors.
Yes!
Let's talk ancestors. If I look at ancestors in how the Vikings in the sagas looked at their ancestors. So this is about 1,000 years removed from where we are. No, 1,000. 1,000 years? No.
The Vikings
10th
in
century.
the classical Viking ages, around
3rd
about
to 10th, 11th, yeah. It's about 1,000
about
years?
1,000 years.
Yeah. Sorry, my maths did maths things there for a minute.
That's
and
all
it just
right.
kind of went, have I got enough zeros? Have I got too many zeros? I can't work it out. Passing over the fact that I can't do maths. So, if you look at the sagas, and the sagas are stories that are written down after the fact, but they also detail, especially when you look at the Icelandic sagas, how people viewed their ancestors. Ancestors in that period were understood to confer blessings.
Okay.
You could ask your ancestors for a blessing. They commonly gave fertility to the land.
Okay.
That tends to be quite a big part of what goes on. So the people and the land are intrinsically linked via the ancestors. People can literally look out across their farmland or their village or their town with a palisade wall around it, and they can see the cemeteries at the edges of their lands. The dead are buried along the margins, along the boundaries.
Okay.
So you can literally in that age look out across your lands and point to where your ancestors are as your ancestral claim on the land because they're buried in it.
Yeah.
They're right there. They prove that you've got rights to that farm or that land or that hillside because your ancestors are in it.
Yeah.
One of the other examples that you get is the fact that people who are living will go and sit out on a burial mound, and they will do that. They will go and sit on their ancestors' burial mound to either receive inspiration, or they'll have a question that they will sit, and either they'll sit there all night and they'll try and stay awake, or they'll sit there and they'll go to sleep and they'll dream, and the answer will come to them, or their ancestor will come to them, because that's the place you go to go and talk to your ancestral spirits.
How strange.
You go and sit on the burial mound and
I was always
ask.
I was brought up in sort of with Christian churches and Christian cemeteries and burial grounds and stuff, and I was always told you don't. I used to, if I had to walk through a churchyard,
you walk on a path.
I walk around the graves. I make sure I don't stand on them, because
Exactly,
that would be,
because it's disrespectful.
the idea of going and sitting on some dead person.
Well, it tends to be not necessarily a flat grave. They're sitting on a mound, so they're sitting on a huge big pile of earth that's been plonked over the top. So it's like a little mini hill that you go and walk up and you sit on top of.
Yeah.
Ancestors in the sagas are petitioned for help an awful lot.
Okay.
They're asked for their assistance, their guidance. They're still spoken to and communicated with as if they're still alive. For me, when I talk about my ancestors, it is logical to say that I know the names of some of them. I've spoken to people who were alive and are now no longer here.
Yeah.
They become my ancestors.
Okay.
They go into that grouping.
Yeah.
So when I say I greet the ancestors, I might want to use a general greeting. So I might want to just say, "Hail to my ancestors." I don't have to name all of my ancestors.
Okay.
I might not know the names of all of my ancestors.
No.
They go back a whole long way. There are people in there that I have never met. I don't know their faces. I don't know their voices. I've never, sat at their table and eaten with them. They are people that stretch way back, that were still alive, and their loves and their choices came down to me.
Yeah.
And I'm alive because of the choices and decisions that they made in their lives. That has resulted in me. When I greet the ancestors or I thank them, I don't tend to need to name all of them. This can be a tricky thought if you think, well, I don't know all my ancestors.
No.
Or I'm not sure who my ancestors are. Or there's an ancestor that I know was very devoutly another faith that isn't a Satru. Can I include them? Can I respect them in the way that I want to when I am greeting them? Yes. They are still your ancestor.
The thought that immediately occurs there, because I think it's safe to say that we've, in cultural terms, we both originate from probably largely Christian families.
Yes,
I think that's fair to say.
My grandmother was Christian, yeah.
So you sort of think, well,
she also rode a motorbike, which was awesome.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. So did my dad, I think.
He did, yes, yeah. It was a total terror.
But I suppose, they kind of sort themselves out. I mean, if any ancestor of ours who is a Christian, or was a Christian, is presumably not going to hear us doing prayers to
maybe not
pagan gods, because they're off doing their
thing.
Heaven thing. And
or if you have ancestors that are atheist or Muslim or Hindu or Jewish, they're doing their thing. But
those
for me, it's still
those who are of a mind to hear
will hear and know that you are including everybody.
Yeah.
I can name you 3 generations back and part of a 4th, but that's it.
Wow.
And I know that there are hundreds of people before that I don't know by name, and I can't use their given name to greet them because I don't have a record
An
anymore.
uncountable number of people.
Yeah.
I mean, you're doing better than me.
Huge amount.
I can name you my parents.
Yes. Yeah.
With a bit of thought, I can name you my grandparents.
Yeah.
I think.
I have
no
some
idea.
of my great grandparents.
I have no idea who my great grandparents are. Not the foggiest.
But that's, I think for me, the beauty of that is if you come to it, you think, well, I'm worried because I don't know all my ancestors by name. You're not going to.
No.
They go back in a line that stretches further back than you will ever be able to see. The thought is I will turn that around. You may not know who all of your ancestors are, but they will all know you. And you can speak to them just the same. Especially if you're not sure who your ancestors are, if you're thinking, well, I was adopted, and I'm worried that the family I've got isn't the family, my blood relation family, your family is your family.
Yeah.
Whether they are blood related to you or not. The people who cared for you and raised you and gave you values and experience and taught you how to move through the world are your family.
I suppose we come to this, we're going to run into the issue of who the ancestors are, and I know that, I mean, that's a good way of describing it. The people with whom you have
kinship bonds,
that kind of bond, the people who have raised you, as you say, and I think this probably incorporates a lot of different perspectives on the idea, because I mean, people will say, perhaps the more folkish among us will say, well, your ancestors, they might be blood relatives, or they might be people who share your culture or your nationality or what have you, that through whatever actions they've taken have created the environment into which you were born and that kind of thing. I don't know. I mean, it's not. I'll come to my views on ancestors in a minute. It'll only take 2 minutes.
So for me, even if maybe you've come to a country and the people that you are, you claim family with are in another country, they're still there.
Yeah.
And the people that raised them, your ancestors, you can still talk to those ancestors.
Yeah.
There is, the Vikings are huge travellers. They were still talking to their ancestors and bringing their ancestors with them when they came to a new place. Not literally.
Yeah.
But, they still felt those connections. They still had those links between them.
Yeah.
For me, the ancestors are very important, but they are in that wider universal sense of the people who are no longer in this world that guide me and help me do what I'm doing. In the sagas, they'll tell you that the ancestors are petitioned for help. So if I know that one of my ancestors had a particular skill or talent in a particular area that I could really do with a bit of help in, I might address them in prayer, or I might say to them, I remember you. I remember you were good at this thing.
Yeah.
I know that those skills are in my line, and I would like you to help me focus my talents and my experience and my understanding. Help me have a little bit of your understanding. Help me see things the way you saw things.
Yeah.
Help me do this task that I am coming to. And I don't see that there's anything particularly bad about doing that. There is certainly a lot of historical precedent for the ancestors being asked and talked to. If you have family news, it used to be the tradition a few years ago, certainly in the UK, to write letters to all of the people on your Christmas card list and post them in the Christmas card envelope with your year's worth of news. Do you remember doing that?
Round robin,
the round robin, which
I never did it.
You may,
I've always been terrible at writing letters.
You may still do, but you may now do by email, or your
I'm
older
terrible at
relatives
emails too.
may do by email, and they may give you, or you may receive Christmas cards with a little bits of family news in it of people you've connected to over the years, and they're telling you what's happened and what's going on.
Hell, I'm terrible at texting people. I can't even keep people up to date on Facebook.
Okay. But if you take that concept and you want to choose one particular time in the year to give your ancestors that family news.
Yeah.
Now, some people will choose Samhain to do that.
Yes.
The Halloween, the night.
The dead are closest to us.
The dead are closest to us.
Yeah.
Some people may view the dead are closest to us at Samhain. So you may choose at that time to write a round robin to all your ancestors, or speak one, stand by the fire and ask the fire to take your messages to them and say, oh yeah, I've got to tell you all, this is what happened this year.
Yeah.
These qualifications have been earned, this has happened, this all of this news is going on and this person has got engaged and I need to keep you up to date with what's happening in your family, this is what's happening. Some folks prefer to write it in a letter, or prefer to write specific ancestors a letter, and then either burn it or bury it or send it off in a river.
Send it up.
And let it send
wherever.
Let it send away and focus on that connection between you and your ancestors and the people that you class as your family.
Yeah.
Family is a beautiful, all-encompassing word. For the last bit of this episode, I'd like to concentrate a little bit on a specific group of ancestors.
Okay.
And those are the ancestors of your female line.
Right. Your mitochondrial ancestors.
Yes. That's not all the ones with all the legs, is it? That's like centipedal ancestors.
I'm fine.
Oh, no.
So these mitochondrial DNA is passed down through the female line.
Through the female line. So the female ancestors of your line, whoever they may be, are called, in singular, they're called a dis, D-I-S.
Dis.
If you're looking at a group of them, the whole group of them, they're called the Disir.
Okay.
If you want to acknowledge them as a specific group, you may have a Disirblot, a thanksgiving ritual or an honouring ritual to your female line.
Okay.
To the female line.
I'm just going to say this is not to be confused with the Roman Dis.
No.
Who is a god of the underworld.
Yes.
So similar kind of,
Deus manibus.
Kind of area.
Yeah. Dis manibus?
Well, a god or the gods of there is people refer to Dis as the sort of spirits of the dead, as in these the inscription Dis manibus, which you find
yes.
in a lot.
I thought I'd seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, you find it a lot of grave funerary inscriptions.
It's like the opening, isn't it?
It's to the spirits of the dead. There's a great example at what they call the Gherkin in London. I'm going to go just slightly off.
Go,
do
here. The thing, go.
And then we'll get back on track. At the Gherkin in London, which is an office building at 30 St Mary Axe.
For goodness sake, only we could name something after a pickle.
Oh, hey.
Why would we do this?
UK.
No, not UK. Boaty McBokeface to the UK. No, never mind.
When they were digging up the foundations for the Gherkin, for the office building there, they uncovered the remains of a Roman girl, a girl from Roman London, and they didn't know anything about her. They didn't know who she was, or anything about what she did, or anything like that. But they had to sort of work around her grave.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful touch. Immediately after they'd finished, as soon as they'd sorted that area out, they reburied her.
Yes.
And they reburied her, and they didn't have to, but they did. They had a marble inscription done on one of there's like low blocks that they've used as a sort of a boundary marker.
Yeah.
And they put an inscription on one of these blocks that just says, Dis manibus, puella incognita londiniensis
Hic jacet.
hic sepulta est.
No! Darn it.
Which means, to the spirits of the dead, the unknown young girl from Roman London lies buried here, and they put a little laurel thing on it, and it's just absolutely beautiful. The idea that they actually took the time to sort of almost reconsecrate, as best we can, this girl's grave to her gods or her spirits, and
in her way,
as near as we can understand it. They made the effort, and I think that counted for a lot. Anyway, this is not the Dis we are we are looking for.
These are not the Dis you are looking for. Move along. No, these Dis. This is going to go wrong, isn't it?
These Dis here.
These Dis here. No. This is going to go so wrong.
I think it's already gone fairly far wrong. We're going to have to do some serious...
We might have to do a bit of tweaking.
Placating after this.
There are examples of the Dis, the female ancestral spirits, your female ancestral spirits, being called on for assistance. And there's a particular charm which I'll recite, which is all about giving aid whilst somebody is giving birth,
Okay.
asking the female ancestral spirits to aid the woman in labour. And it goes, birth runes shall you know, if birthing you'll aid. Okay. And bring forth from mothers the bairns, on palm shall you scratch them on spans of hands back, and bid the Disir to aid.
Okay.
So here you are marking a birthing rune on somebody who is in labour and asking the female ancestral spirits to aid that person's labour.
On account of it being a bloody dangerous endeavour.
Yes, and, epic pain and stamina and all that jazz, which a lot of the female ancestors will know and have experienced. So they can then be requested very politely to come and aid in that situation.
Yeah.
There are also portents of other kinds which involve the Disir. And in the Lay of Atlil, Glamvor tells Gunnar, who is her husband, Glamvor is the lady, she tells Gunnar, her husband, that she's been dreaming several dreams which she takes as portents.
Okay.
And the last one, she sees the dead women, the Disir, coming to claim her husband. So she knows that if her husband goes and does the endeavour that he's thinking of, he's going to end up being claimed by the Disir and taken.
Okay.
So she dreams of the Disir coming to take him.
This is not a friendly dream.
No, it depends on your interpretation.
It does. I suppose it does.
It does. So there are lots of little ways you can connect with your ancestors. I mean, in that last example, they're almost acting as Valkyrie.
Yeah, I guess.
As somebody who comes to claim those who are newly dead and transport them elsewhere.
The choosers of the slain.
The choosers of the slain. For me, when I think about my ancestors, I'm thinking about all those ones that I know and have known, and all the ones beyond that, back into the distance that I have never had a chance to know and will never know.
No.
But all of those people have come down to me. All of them know me by name. I might not know all of them by name. It's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. It's all the people.
It's all the people, which consequently means that,
Well, not all the people.
if I go back far enough, I have relation in every person I meet.
Yeah.
Every person is a member of my family. Every person deserves warm frith, warm hearth, warm heart, good conversation, just sharing a little bit of what I have. Because I go back far enough, we are all connected. I don't have to go back far enough. I just have to go back. And we have connection between people. Humanitas. So I think we'll probably best leave it there for today.
Oh.
And, hopefully we've had a wee bit of a zoom around ancestors.
Indeed.
What they mean to me personally.
Yeah.
And a couple of the examples of where they've come from in history as well.
Awesome.
So,
Yes.
usual sign off then.
If you'd like,
Yes.
please do go ahead.
I thank you. I've been Suzanne Martin. I'm one of the ambassadors for TAC. You can find me on Facebook under Suzanne Martin and also on Twitter at Suzanne TAC, which is TAC. Give me a follow, throw me a friend request. It's all good.
Indeed. I'm Kate, and you can find me, the best place to find me is on my shabby website, which is... Well, it is!
It's not!
I'm improving it gradually, like a
it's
couple of words every 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, it's a good place. It's a good place.
But you'll find me at glassrain.net, and my social media accounts are linked from there, or you can leave a comment directly on the website if you want to.
Yes. If there's anything you'd like us to cover in a future Frithcast, just let us know. Post us a comment, get in touch.
We're always keen to hear your suggestions.
It's all good.
we record these a little bit ahead of putting them out.
We do.
So
We've got chance for life to happen in between
indeed.
times.
So if you do make any suggestions, you won't see them crop up immediately, but
They will. Yeah, they'll get there.
they'll be there before long.
Yeah.
And we're more than happy to. We're more than happy to. I'm saying this. I'm not the heathen. I don't know these things. If you've got any questions or whatever, I know Suzanne is more than happy to.
Oh, thanks. Just drop me right in
Of
it.
course, I'm dropping you right in it. If they wanted to know about Druidry, they'd be following a Druid podcast. And even
with my wife dropping me right in it.
and being a crap Druid, I can't really tell them much anyway.
You are not a crap druid. With that, lovely listeners, we will see you round the virtual campfire next time.
We will, and we're looking forward to it.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.